And welcome along to Living Truth Radio on this Sunday, the 9th?
Of November.
9th of November.
Isn't that a shock?
2025.
How fast is this year going past? Ooh.
Wow. I'm Tony.
I'm Pamela.
Great to have your company today. We are Living Truth Radio with video. How do we talk about that?
Well, before we started the broadcast today, we actually were discussing that a little bit, and it's my opinion that people may or may not be aware that we actually, when we say that we are showing a video, it's actually a video. You can watch it. It's someone other than we are.
Yeah.
And if someone is curious whether or not or why we are not on video.
Well, we're not really set up for camera work yet. We're in the middle of changing studios, so we don't want to have something as cheap as like a webcam or something like that. We want to have like a proper video setup if we were going to be doing something like that. So
it'll be easier on the eyes, we'll say.
Yeah, we've got great faces for radio.
If you've seen either of our profile pictures, you would probably have noticed that.
What does it mean? We don't judge the vessel. We judge the contents in the vessel, right? And that's what we should be doing, not judging by the outward appearance. Na-na-na-boo-boo.
And just as an aside, or maybe an addition probably, that it isn't about us. It's not about me, not about you. It's about the truth, which is why we call it Living Truth. Because Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life.
The truth is constantly under assault in this day and age, and we are seeing people doing things that we never thought that they would do. It's like a line's been drawn, isn't it?
It looks that way.
And people are doing all sorts of weird stuff. People that once earned our trust. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
It seems so. People will definitely, in these closing days, shall we say, of the history of mankind, they're going to be revealing who they really are, true colors. So do be discerning, do pay attention, do test every spirit.
From the title of the podcast, you will deduce that we are going to be talking about Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes, and I said the infiltration, and we're going to explain that. Tucker Carlson, as probably the entire planet and universe knows, interviewed a horrible human being by the name of Nick Fuentes. You're going to hear all about him today. I was going to play a video recorded by Ben Shapiro. I'm still going to be playing that video. But Ben addressed this particular issue, and he played Nick Fuentes in the raw. He didn't bleep anything out. This was raw Nick. And I was going to play that verbatim because I want you all to understand what kind of people we are dealing with in the professing right.
And professing to be Christians.
Professing to be Christian.
You'd have to decide for yourself how many bleeps you hear to answer whether or not he's honoring God's word, where he says to keep all filthy speech from your mouth. Don't say things like that.
It was really difficult to do that because in order to edit that out, I had to actually listen to it over and over and over again. And it's not just the F-bomb. Again, the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. So you can tell what's in a person's heart by what comes out of their mouth. And you're going to hear that today. But not only I've bleeped out the words, and they were mainly F-bombs, but this guy is I'm sorry. No, I won't say it. I'm trying to restrain myself from name calling. But
I guess
if he and I were in a room for 2 minutes, and you think that's harsh, wait till you hear what this person has to say. The anger on the conservative right at Tucker Carlson is not that he brought this human toad onto the world stage for everyone to hear. It's that he didn't push back on what this human toad peddles. He's the head of an army called the Groypers. Yeah, just the whole thing is demented, but you're going to hear it today. So I cut out all of the expletives, but I do want you to pay particular attention to the body language because it gives you the fuller picture of what's inside Nick Fuentes. Acts chapter 20, verses 28 to 30 read, "Pay careful attention to yourselves and to all the flock, in which the Holy Spirit has made you overseers, to care for the church of God, which he obtained with his own blood. And know that after my departure, fierce wolves will come in among you, not sparing the flock. And from among your own selves will arise men speaking twisted things, to draw away the disciples after themselves. Therefore be alert, remembering that for 3 years I did not cease night or day to admonish everyone with tears." So, there's a wolf in the house, and Tucker Carlson let him in, effectively. Now, when I say he's in the house, Nick Fuentes claims to be a Christian. Anyone who seriously believes this guy is a Christian has the discernment of a baked potato. He is a bigoted, gutter-mouthed, conceited, antisemitic, Hitler-loving, Stalin-adoring, misogynist, closet homosexual racist.
I would agree with all of those, yes. But we will, and he will, let him speak for himself.
There wouldn't have been a problem had Tucker Carlson pushed back, but he didn't. And he betrayed a lot of people in doing so. So we maintain that Tucker Carlson is batting for the enemy, and if you can't see that, frankly, you're not looking.
Well, isn't that what the Bible does teach us? If you're accusing somebody of something, it's usually that you're doing the same thing. But also, whether you're doing it actively or you're just condoning it, either way, you're still on that side, and
right.
You were judged under that law.
Yeah, Romans 1:18
Absolutely.
to 32 speaks about that. The complicity in the crime gets the same penalty. So, well, let's have a listen to this. It goes for a little while, and we'll come back and have a bit more discussion on it. It's Ben Shapiro recently, when he spoke about Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes.
And we caution you to go into this prayerfully.
Amen.
Hey, folks, I want to do something different on today's show. We're going to cover one topic in depth. That topic is, I think, the most important thing happening in the country. It was a hot topic last week, but I wanted to take some time to really gather my thoughts and speak on it in coherent fashion, holistic fashion. That topic is the fragmentation of the political right. That fragmentation is being caused purposefully by a splinter faction of people led by a young man named Nick Fuentes. They call themselves the Groypers. They are white supremacists. They hate women, Jews, Hindus, many types of Christians, brown people of a wide variety of backgrounds, blacks, America's foreign policy, and America's Constitution. They admire Hitler and Stalin. And that splinter faction is now being facilitated and normalized within the mainstream Republican Party. The main agent in that normalization is Tucker Carlson, who is an intellectual coward, a dishonest interlocutor, and a terrible friend. And Tucker Carlson last week was aided, abetted, celebrated for normalizing Nazism within the Republican Party by the mainstay organization of the traditional right, the Heritage Foundation. Now, before we explain what's been happening, let's make one thing clear. This is not about free speech or cancellation. It was never about free speech or cancellation. Free speech has a definition: the right to speak free of governmental coercion. I believe in it, of course. I've always defended it. Criticism of bad speech is, in fact, just a form of free speech. Cancellation also has a definition: the banning of particular people, including people like Nick Fuentes, from platforms like X or Facebook. I believe that Nick Fuentes is odious and despicable, but I've never called for his cancellation. And in fact, I've called for his restoration to those services, despite the fact that I think he's odious and despicable. It is not cancellation to draw moral lines between viewpoints. In fact, we used to call that one of the key aspects of conservatism. It is not cancellation to refuse to signal boost Hitler's supporters like Nick Fuentes. It is not cancellation to criticize Tucker Carlson for rhetorically fluffing Nick Fuentes and other anti-American crackpots. It's not cancellation if you urge others to stop promoting those who rhetorically fluff Nazi apologists. Those are all elements of free speech. And anyone who says differently is lying to you, and lying for the most cynical reasons to misdirect from their own defense of those Nazi apologists and their promoters. The issue here isn't that Tucker Carlson had Nick Fuentes on his show last week. He has every right to do that, of course. The issue here is that Tucker Carlson decided to normalize and fluff Nick Fuentes, and that the Heritage Foundation then decided to robustly defend that performance. Those who criticize both Tucker and Heritage aren't canceling. They are quite properly drawing a moral line. So, for those who don't understand what's going on, let's begin with Nick Fuentes. Now, as I mentioned, last week, Tucker Carlson had on Nick Fuentes. Fuentes is a 27-year-old man who's dubbed himself the leader of a movement called the Groypers. He has a large audience of alienated young white men in particular, and he's earned increased media attention over the course of the past few years, especially over the last year. Now, from Tucker Carlson's interview, you might have gathered that Fuentes has some borderline views on race, a peculiar obsession with what he calls organized Jewry, and a rather sad relationship with the female sex. But probably you came away thinking that, for the most part, Fuentes lives on the radical edge of normality. You think that if you watch the interview, because Tucker Carlson decided that it was important not only to host Fuentes, but to smooth over his views, water them down, and make them far more palatable to a normal audience. As we'll discuss in a bit, this is what Tucker Carlson does for a living. But back to Nick Fuentes. To understand just what Tucker did here, we must actually examine what Nick Fuentes says on his show, and has said for almost a decade, because he was asked precisely 0 questions about any of what you're about to see by Tucker Carlson. Nick Fuentes says women want to be raped.
A lot of women want to be raped, and when I say raped, I mean like, that sounds bad when I say it like that, but there's like a lot of women that really want a guy to beat the out of them, but also they have to pretend, but part of it is they have to pretend like they don't.
Nick Fuentes says that his followers should kill, rape, and die in his name.
Raise your right hand. All right, everybody raise your right hand. Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I will kill, rape, and die for Nicholas J. Fuentes.
Nick Fuentes says that women are whores who shouldn't be in politics.
I will continue my crusade against women in politics. Because it's always like this, and it's so ironic. Women are like, I don't like, when you say, you have to affect the face. When you say to repeal the 19th Amendment, that offends me. That hurts my feelings. It's like, have you ever stopped and considered that maybe if you get offended, there's such a strong emotional reaction to political opinions you disagree with across the board? Maybe that's one of the reasons why you shouldn't be making political decisions. I'm not attacking women. I'm attacking whores. You have no problems, right? I'm attacking whores. I'm attacking sluts. Stupid, dirty bitches.
Nick Fuentes says that Jim Crow was actually better for black people.
It was better for them too, number one, but number two, who cares? Who cares? You know, enough with the Jim Crow stuff. Who cares? Oh, they had to drink out of a different water fountain. Big deal. Oh no, they had to go to a different school. Their water fountain in that famous picture was worse. Who cares? Grow up, drink out of the water fountain. It's water, it's the same. You know, and, even if it was bad, who cares? Who cares? It's better. It's better in general. We all agree it was better for them. It's better for us. Better in general.
Nick Fuentes says that white people are justified in being racist.
The reason that we talk about this, by the way, I know a lot of black people see this and they go, man, why are you always talking about black people, this and that? Because there just needs to be some shame here. Well, there's a few reasons. First, white people are every single bit justified in being racist. Every single bit justified, to the extent that that means going out of your way to avoid black people when you see them.
Nick Fuentes is a Hitler admirer and a Holocaust denier.
Buddy, it's Führer Friday. It is Hitler Friday. Shut up. It is Heil Hitler Friday, nigga. Heil Hitler, all my niggas Nazis.
Hitler was a pedophile and kind of a pagan. It's like, well, he was also really cool. So, time to grow up. We're not children anymore. Am I right? Am I right? Am I right, boys? Am I right? Let's go. He was also really cool. It doesn't really sound correct to me. Wait a second. It takes 1 hour to cook a batch of cookies, and you have 15 ovens, probably in 4 different kitchens, right? Doing 24 hours a day, every day for 5 years. How long would it take you to make 6 million? I don't know. It certainly wouldn't be 5 years, right? The math doesn't seem to add up there. The math doesn't quite seem to add up there. I don't think you'd result in 6 million. Maybe 200 to 300,000 cookies. And I think the Red Cookie Association said something like that, probably 200 to 300,000 cookies baked, probably. And in addition, in this hypothetical, I imagine that if you took aerial photographs over the kitchens, you would need to see certain smokestacks to release the smoke from baking the cookies. And the smokestacks would project certain shadows, but I guess they're not visible in the aerial photographs taken over the kitchens. Moreover, if you look at the soil texture, it's really not deep enough for mass cookie storage underground.
Nick Fuentes believes that the Jews start all the wars, that perfidious Jews in positions of power ought to be killed, and says the Jews are filth who have to be removed from the country.
And once again, remember who is responsible for it all: the Jews. They are responsible for every war in the world. It's not even debatable at this point. This has nothing to do with oil. This has nothing to do with democracy. This has nothing to do with liberal internationalism. We are at war with Iran because they pose a threat to Israel's hegemony. That's why we're bombing their nukes, to pave the way for regime change so Israel can dominate the region, because that makes them the most powerful they can be.
There is an occult element at the high levels of society, and specifically among the Jews. So many of the people that are perpetrating the lies and the destruction on the country, they are evildoers. They are people that worship false gods. They are people that practice magic or rituals or whatever. And more than anything, those people need to be, when we take power, they need to be given the death penalty. Straight up. And I'm far more concerned about that than I am about even non-white people or mass migration. These people that are communing with demons and engaging in this sort of witchcraft and stuff, and these people that are suppressing the name Christ and suppressing Christianity, they must be absolutely annihilated when we take power. This is God's country. This is Jesus's country. This is not the domain of atheists or devil worshippers or perfidious Jews. This is Christ's country.
Josh Hammer and Mark Levin, these people. Like, deeply, seriously, all real Americans, if you are a real American, if you were born in this country, I don't even care who you are, what you are, if you are a real American that loves this country, you have generations in this country, your family or you fought for this flag, fought for the Constitution, fought for our church, fought for our civilization. For all of you, I say about Josh Hammer and Mark Levin and Laura Loomer, them. Deeply, seriously, get them the out of our country.
Nick Fuentes, it should be mentioned, despises Donald Trump and the MAGA movement as well.
You suck. You are fat. You are a joke. You are stupid. You are not funny. You are not as smart as you think you are. You are, and honestly, and if you watch my show, you know I've been very critical. I've never been this far. This just goes to show this entire thing has been a scam. When we look back on the history of populism in America, we are going to look back on the MAGA movement as the biggest scam in American history. And the liberals were right. The MAGA supporters were had. They were.
So, that right there is just a brief glimpse into the twisted mind of Nick Fuentes. And there's plenty more where that came from. Of course, hours of it per day, in fact. And there's no doubt that Nick Fuentes has a lot of play these days. That's because the left, by moving into a politics of anti-white, anti-Christian, anti-male identitarianism, created its bizarro mirror image, a white pseudo-Christian incel identitarian movement dedicated to destroying the institutions of this country and replacing Americanism with something else. Nick Fuentes' philosophy is not fully formed. It's an incoherent stew of malignity. But that's where Tucker Carlson enters the story. Now, since his exit from Fox News in 2023, when, of course, he was a very, very popular host, Tucker Carlson has turned himself into a conspiracist and a crank and a pathological liar. Tucker excuses Vladimir Putin's murderous and barbarous reign. He has even become one of his most ardent defenders.
It is so much nicer than any city in my country. I had no idea. My father spent a lot of time there in the 80s when he worked for the US government and barely had electricity. And now it is so much cleaner and safer and prettier aesthetically. It's architecture, it's food, it's service than any country, city in the United States that you have to, and this is non-ideological. How did that happen? How did that happen? And at a certain point, I don't think the average person cares as much about abstractions as about the concrete reality of his life. And if you can't use your subway, for example, as many people are afraid to in New York City because it's too dangerous, you have to sort of wonder, like, isn't that the ultimate measure of leadership? And that's true, by the way, it's radicalizing for an American to go to Moscow, I didn't know that, I've learned it this week, to Singapore, to Tokyo, to Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Because these cities, no matter how we're told they're run and on what principles they're run, are wonderful places to live.
So I guess you put in 10 rubles here and you get it back when you put the cart back. So it's free, but there's an incentive to return it and not just bring it to your homeless encampment. I went from amused to legitimately angry. So we were guessing what this would cost. Everybody hears from the United States, buys groceries, and we didn't pay any attention to costs as we were just putting in the cart what we would actually eat over a week. And we all came in around $400, about $400. It was $104 US here. And that's when you start to realize that ideology maybe doesn't matter as much as you thought, corruption. If you take people's standard of living and you tank it through filth and crime and inflation, and they literally can't buy the groceries they want, at that point, maybe it matters less what you say or whether you're a good person or a bad person. You're wrecking people's lives in their country, and that's what our leaders have done to us.
When Tucker Carlson interviewed Vladimir Putin, by the way, Vladimir Putin was so amused by Tucker Carlson's easy questioning that he actually mocked him. Tucker Carlson has massaged the Iranian dictatorship and admitted to not asking any difficult questions of the president of that dictatorship.
The interview is limited by a couple of factors. One, it was done by remote through a translator. That's always awkward. For another, I don't speak Persian. And there are all kinds of questions that I didn't ask the president of Iran, particularly questions to which I knew I could not get an honest answer, such as, was your nuclear program totally disabled by the bombing campaign by the U.S. government a week and a half ago? There's no chance he's going to answer that question honestly. I didn't bother to ask it. The answer, in fact, from an American perspective, even from the CIA's perspective, is unknowable.
Tucker bizarrely worships at the altar of Qatar.
They're mad at you because you don't put your parents in some institution. Maybe they're trying to break up your families.
Well, it can be a reason. Honestly, I don't know what is really the purpose behind this, but we see that, you know, a lot of things that are happening are attacks on humanity in general. It's when you lose the family value, when you lose the connection between the family themselves, you will lose the connection between the people as well, on a broader level, on the people in the same neighborhood, on the people in the same region, in the same countries. And that's basically will just make us, you know, as individuals who are quote unquote independent from anyone, that's what we will feel. Yet it will just make our societies vulnerable and easy to be penetrated.
That's right.
Tucker Carlson praises Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro, even as Maduro keeps the entire country in communist penury and ships fentanyl into the United States to kill Americans by the hundreds of thousands.
Why are we so opposed to Nicolas Maduro? So if you ask someone on the street, random person, why are we against Nicolas Maduro? The answer you're going to get is, who's Nicolas Maduro? But if you find someone in South Florida, for example, who knows who Nicolas Maduro is, who can identify where Venezuela is on a map, that person will almost certainly say, well, because he's a communist or a socialist, he's exceedingly left-wing. And that is true. Nicolas Maduro and his government are very left-wing on economics. Not on social policy, by the way, which is kind of interesting. In Venezuela, gay marriage is banned, abortion is banned, sex changes for transgenderism are banned. It's one of the very few countries in the entire hemisphere with those policies. It is on social policy, not defending the regime, just saying, one of the most conservative countries in North or South or Central America. Only El Salvador really comes close.
Tucker Carlson glosses Hamas, the genocidal jihadi group behind October 7th, as a political organization.
You can't claim that they're in Hamas while simultaneously claiming that Hamas is group of jihadis. They're Islamic extremists, which they also claim constantly, which I don't know if that's true, by the way. It seems more like a political organization, but whatever it is, they're telling us constantly they're Al-Qaeda.
Tucker Carlson has attacked President Trump as a cover-up artist for sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein on behalf of Israel and Mossad, making sure, of course, never to mention President Trump's name, because, of course, Tucker's a coward.
And moreover, it's extremely obvious to anyone who watches that this guy had direct connections to a foreign government. Now, no one's allowed to say that that foreign government is Israel because we have been somehow cowed into thinking that that's naughty. There is nothing wrong with saying that. There is nothing hateful about saying that.
Tucker Carlson has stated that President Trump has undermined America First and MAGA by attacking Iran, giving in to neocon ghouls like Mark Levin, while also idiotically arguing that President Trump striking Iran's nuclear facilities would lead to World War III. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Tucker Carlson also said in his interview with Nick Fuentes that the people he hates most in the entire world, more than ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Trans-Tifa, Marxists, rapists, murderers, are Christian Zionists who represent an enormous chunk of the conservative base. According to Tucker Carlson, who admits that he first read the Bible all the way through just 2 years ago, Christians who support a Jewish state of Israel are heretics and blasphemers with a brain virus.
How do you explain Mike Huckabee, Ted Cruz, and there are a lot like that, John Bolton? I mean, I've known them all, George W. Bush, like Karl Rove. I mean, all people I know personally who I've seen like be seized by this brain virus, and they're not Jewish. Most of them are self-described Christians, and then the Christian Zionists who are, well, Christian Zionists. Like, what is that?
Right.
And I can just say for myself, I dislike them more than anybody. Because like, what? Because it's Christian heresy, and I'm offended by that as a Christian.
Tucker Carlson has said that he despises American Jews who care about October 7th. We, in his words, don't care about America and also want to get his kids killed in a foreign war.
I've got 4 draft-age children. So if you're playing recklessly, fast and loose with their lives, then I have a right to despise you, and I do. So if you're Nikki Haley, who's running for president, or Ben Shapiro, or half the people I see on television casually mentioning the possibility of nuclear war or sending Americans to fight in the Middle East, or in any way involving us in a war that has nothing to do with prosperity and peace at home, nothing, in other words, to do with us, Americans, then I have a right to call you out and be really offended because it's my family. They live here. It's not a joke to me. There's nothing abstract about it.
But most of all, Tucker Carlson acts as an ideological launderer for other people's evils. Tucker Carlson says many inflammatory things, always buying back just enough of it to appear as though he's not saying what he's clearly saying. He's a master of gaslighting. Tucker Carlson, for example, would never say out loud what Nick Fuentes does. He wouldn't say the things many of his guests say. And so instead, he acts as an ideological launderer. He takes other people's hideous ideas, he softens them, he treats them with love and care, and then he provides them with a massive signal boost. He isn't merely talking to people in good faith, of course. He's promoting certain people and ideas and attacking others. So, for example, he'll ask a series of wildly obsequious questions to Nick Fuentes. He'll even let Nick Fuentes' support for Joseph Stalin slide.
It's actually funny. It was December 18th. I remember because that's an important date to me. And it's Joseph Stalin's birthday.
Oh.
I'm a fan.
You're a fan of Stalin's?
Mm-hmm. Always an admirer. But we don't need to go into that, I guess.
Well, that's, okay, let's get back to it. We'll circle back to that.
But he will grill Ted Cruz about the population of Iran. Tucker Carlson will have on Vladimir Putin's evil, anti-American mouthpiece, Alexander Dugin, and then praise him.
Alexander Dugin is a 62-year-old Russian academic philosopher. He spent his life in Moscow. He was an anti-Soviet dissident as a young man. And now he is famous the world over, in the English language press anyway, as, quote, Putin's brain. But he is not a political figure here in Russia. He is, once again, a philosopher. And his ideas are deeply offensive to some people. In August of 2022, his only daughter was murdered in Moscow when a car bomb killed her. U.S. intelligence says she was murdered by the Ukrainian government, and we take that at face value. But what's interesting is that, once again, Alexander Dugin is not a military leader. He's not a close daily advisor to Vladimir Putin. He is a writer
who writes about big ideas. And for this, his books have been banned by the Biden administration in the United States. You cannot buy them on Amazon, banning books in the United States because the ideas inside are too dangerous. He is often described, again in the English language press, as far right. We'll let you assess, but we wanted to talk to him about some of his ideas, these ideas that are so dangerous that his only daughter was murdered over them, and his book's been banned in the United States.
Tucker Carlson will have on a Hitler-friendly pseudo-historian to minimize the Holocaust and blame Winston Churchill for World War II, and he will call him America's best and most honest historian.
I thought Churchill was the chief villain of the Second World War. Now, he didn't kill the most people, he didn't commit the most atrocities, but I believe, and I think when you really get into it and tell the story right and don't leave anything out, you see that he was primarily responsible for that war becoming what it did, becoming something other than an invasion of Poland. You know, Germany, look, they put themselves into a position, and Adolf Hitler is chiefly responsible for this, but his whole regime is responsible for it, that when they went into the East in 1941, they launched a war where they were completely unprepared to deal with the millions and millions of prisoners of war, of local political prisoners and so forth that they were going to have to handle. They went in with no plan for that. And they just threw these people into camps, and millions of people ended up dead there.
And that is the pseudo-historian that Tucker Carlson has said is the best and most honest historian in America. Tucker Carlson will have on over and over a pro-Chinese propagandist who used global warming to promote global socialism, all in order to criticize Israel and hug China.
Israel has run American foreign policy in the Middle East for 30 years. That's how it works. This is actually the truth. If we drop our angst on big bad Russia, actually, we didn't have a chance to talk about it this time, maybe another time, big bad China, which is also not going to invade the United States, not going to threaten us, not going to go to war with us. They're trying to deal with aging, and they've got their declining population and many other things. Not that they're falling apart. It's a very impressive civilization, but they're not a threat to the United States, honestly, and Iran is not a threat.
Tucker Carlson, of course, brings on pro-Hamas voices episode after episode after episode. The instances are almost limitless. Tucker Carlson will host Andrew Tate, a pornographer and scam artist who mocks rape victims and preaches a cult of narcissism and cruelty. And of course, Tucker Carlson will glorify him and present him as a maligned truth teller rather than an emblem of moral rot. See, this is how Tucker Carlson's ideological laundering works. You bring your dirty, ugly ideologies to Tucker Carlson's rhetorical car wash. He mixes it with some of the vestigial respect Americans have for him from his Fox News days, and voila, hideous ideas suddenly become mainstream. And then, of course, Tucker denies he said anything controversial at all. He was just asking questions. He was just interviewing people. You don't want him to cancel people, do you? Of course, there is no First Amendment right to a Tucker Carlson sensual massage. But to listen to Tucker, you'd think there was, so long as you despise America, oppose President Trump's foreign policy, and bear a peculiar dislike of Jews. Tucker Carlson, you see, is a coward. And here is where his relationship with Nick Fuentes begins, with Nick Fuentes correctly pointing out that Tucker Carlson is a coward. You see, Tucker Carlson, a few weeks back, had on Candace Owens to treat her to his usual ideological laundering services. That's after years of Candace Owens saying things like this.
And it is the case that dinosaur bones, for whatever reason, are always just found by the paleontologist. Like, it's not like you and me walking outside. I'm like, hey, a dinosaur bone. And, or by somebody who's related to a paleontologist. It's very strange. And then, but it was just convenient for Israel that JFK got shot. It was just convenient, you guys. Totally convenient. It was convenient for Israel, by the way, when the towers went down.
I just want to be clear. Anything happens to me, blame the Zionists. Like 1000% blame the Zionists. Like let that be my parting word.
I'm waking people up to the fact that pedophiles are in power. Yes. They are literally in power. And that is intentional because then they can be controlled while they are in power. And they are also exhibiting signs of a psychopathology that lets them know that they will do harm to the masses and feel nothing because they were themselves, many of them, raped when they were children. Yep. It is not a coincidence that Justin Trudeau is gay. Obama, gay. Zelensky, gay. Emmanuel Macron, gay and married to a trans man who molested him when he was a child.
Well, Candace Owens had recently hosted Nick Fuentes, and this led Tucker Carlson in an attempt to dissociate from Fuentes, to label him a weird little gay kid operating from a basement, and a Fed as well.
That's obvious to me. I've been around a long time. I know it when I see it.
Yeah, and I will say I don't understand it. We were very kind to him. Like, I truly, like, we almost said, like, we felt maybe he was a bit lonely. We should invite him back for dinner. I mean, that's how good of an experience I had.
It's clearly,
and then it was a 180. So it's either A, it's being driven from like a little boy insecurity, and he just was so worried that he like just went on the attack because he doesn't know how to have normal relations after being banned everywhere.
Well, I think there's that
could be one element.
The angry gay kid thing going on. Yeah.
Well, Nick Fuentes did not take kindly to this. After all, here was Tucker Carlson, a man Nick Fuentes correctly sees as a fellow traveler, dismissing him, all the while refusing to say the sorts of things for which Fuentes takes slings and arrows. And so Fuentes unleashed on him as a fraud and also as an expert on gaslighting.
Tucker is like the goat of gaslighting. But unironically, he goes up at the memorial and said, Charlie Kirk told the truth. You know who else told the truth? Jesus. And you know what happened? He got killed by Jews. And people said, so are you saying that the Jews killed Charlie Kirk in the way that they killed Jesus for telling the truth because they hate the truth? And Tucker said, I never said that. You're crazy. I never said that. Everyone eats hummus. What do you mean everyone runs Jerusalem? But I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. Tucker Carlson says, I have so many trust funds, I never have to work. Tucker went to a $45,000 per year private high school, then a $45,000 per year selective Ivy League school in New England. Tucker Carlson's daddy was a Reagan appointee. And then, after years of bragging about being an elite, bragging about being so out of touch and so rich, now he's going to be the spokesperson for all the white people. Now he's going to roll up his sleeves. I just like to hunt and fish in my log cabin. I care about Klarna and credit card debt. But then when it comes to me, I'm one of the real disaffected white people. You want to talk about me and them? I am them.
Well, there was one big problem for Tucker Carlson in all of this. Nick Fuentes is absolutely 100% correct. Tucker is a coward, and Tucker's audience, much of which he shares with Nick Fuentes, knows it. And so Tucker hit upon a final stratagem. He let Nick Fuentes cuck him. He brought Nick Fuentes on to legitimate his ideology. He signal boosted Fuentes, glossed him, shined him, presented him to the world, all in order to protect his own reputation with his online base, a base he is competing over with Nick Fuentes. Now, of course, Tucker has a right to do all of this for the 100th time. He can do what he likes. This is America. But there's no question that Tucker has become the most virulent super spreader of vile ideas in America. And the rest of us who oppose those vile ideas have every right to call him that. There's one other element here that's even darker if possible. Tucker Carlson preys on the friendship he proclaims with others, and then he knifes them directly between the shoulder blades when convenient for him. Tucker Carlson is, in short, a terrible friend. Tucker Carlson was supposedly Charlie Kirk's friend. Charlie believed that Nick Fuentes was vermin. That's a direct quote. He believed that because Nick Fuentes dedicated his life to destroying Charlie Kirk and TPUSA from the inside. In fact, here's Nick Fuentes describing Charlie Kirk the month before Charlie was murdered.
Charlie Kirk cannot call himself a Christian anymore. Sorry, you forfeited that. I do not want to hear, and you cannot allow Charlie Kirk to go to one more public event, one more question and answer, one more ask me anything, without being protested, without being shouted down, without being interrogated about this. This guy goes around from campus to campus in the most artificial and phony and fake way.
And here is Nick Fuentes describing how he destroyed TPUSA from the inside.
Whether he chooses to confront me or not, whether he has dignity and honor or not, it's just a matter of time. My ideas are already there. I've already impregnated your organization. I took Turning Point USA and I it. I took your organization, I took your baby, Turning Point USA, and I it. And I've been it. And that's why it's filled with groypers. That's why your whole crew, that's why the people around you, that's why your chapter presidents, that's why your attendees, they're all groypers.
And here's Nick Fuentes calling Charlie Kirk unpatriotic and talking about how he's a retarded idiot, and saying all firepower should be focused on Charlie Kirk.
I think a lot of people are starting to find out Charlie Kirk is not the patriot that he says he is. And so I look at what happened last night and I think to myself, this is totally a doable operation. You know, Charlie Kirk in the grand scheme of things is just some retarded idiot. The dog is terrified. I had to go upstairs and reassure him because I'm screaming at my screen, calling Charlie Kirk a bitch and everything. The contrast could not be more clear. Charlie Kirk is a totally unexceptional human being. A moral struggle that's happening on the higher dimension, right? Which is Christ versus the devil. Who does Charlie Kirk serve? You know, is he really a Christian? Is he really Christ-like when he supports foreign wars and Israel and all this? Look at the people he's taking money from. You know, so the guy's a fake Christian. The guy's not a patriot. He hates our country. He's un-American. Let's focus all our firepower on Charlie Kirk. Why are we doing this? It's because Charlie Kirk is a fake patriot, a fake Christian, and he hates his people. He's anti-white. This is our angle.
Nick Fuentes despised Charlie Kirk. And for good reason, because Charlie Kirk actually opposed Nick's evil program. Here's what Charlie Kirk had to say about Nick Fuentes' agenda.
But if you go back to the original founding fathers, they intended this to be a European nation for white men of good stock and character. Yes.
So, can you show me, let me answer the question. Can you show me where in the United States Constitution it says that?
It wasn't in the Constitution.
It wasn't in the Constitution because they didn't believe it.
The founding...
What does the phrase e pluribus unum mean? What does the phrase e pluribus unum mean?
Why is that relevant?
Because it was on every founding document and presidential seal from our founding, which means out of many, one. You, sir, and your ideology is not conservative. It is right-wing, identitarian. It has no place in the conservative movement, my friend. Get out of line. Get out of line. I don't platform trolls, and I don't platform and I don't discuss people or I don't debate with people that are not good faith actors. And
you debate Maoists and people who champion.
They can keep on yelling at how successful we are and our big events and well over 1,000 employees. But there's a lot of jealousy out there. We build, they complain. We succeed, we win. They blame the Jews.
After Charlie's death, TPUSA made Tucker Carlson one of its chief faces. Tucker, of course, spoke at Charlie's memorial, where he implied that hummus-eating nefarious Jews killed Charlie, with no mention of the ideology of the actual alleged murderer, who was, of course, a trans activist gay furry. Tucker Carlson, in fact, has spent more time talking about Jews and Israel since Charlie's death than about the Transtifa ideology that motivated Charlie Kirk's killer. By a long shot, it's not close, which is not a surprise, since he seems to spend very little time these days attacking anyone on the left. Well, now Tucker Carlson has seen fit to launder Nick Fuentes, the person who hated Charlie most and who wished him destruction. That's not an act of friendship, it's an act of sick evil. And then, of course, there's Tucker Carlson's relationship with the vice president. Certainly, Vice President Vance has been quite generous with Tucker Carlson. That loyalty was not reciprocated last week, to say the least. Here, for example, is what Nick Fuentes has said about J.D. Vance's wife, Usha.
Andrew Tate and Bronze Age pervert and all these people, for years, all they talk about is going to the gym, being a vitalist, fighting the Matrix, India smells bad, all this kind of shit. And now they're all in favor of a fat race mixer who's married to a Jeet who named his son Vivek, who was mentored by a Jewish neocon and a gay fed, Peter Thiel.
This guy has a non-white wife and a kid named Vivek. This guy is going to be a defender of white identity? I don't think so. This guy's going to defend American identity?
You slammed J.D. Vance for having an Indian wife, yet Trump's wife is an immigrant who was working here legally for a time. His son is half foreign, bilingual, and holds dual citizenship, yet you give him a pass. You're either a hypocrite or just retarded.
She's white! Dude, she's white! If we had millions of Slovenian supermodels immigrating to America, I don't think we'd have a big problem with it.
Tucker Carlson had on Nick Fuentes and did not ask him a single question about any of this. He just brought him on to launder his ugly ideas and make him more popular. That doesn't seem quite like the act of a friend. Which, finally, brings us to the Heritage Foundation. Now, I have a long and admiring relationship with the Heritage Foundation. One of the very first outlets to pick up my syndicated column when I was 17 years old, 24 years ago, was townhall.com, then a property of the Heritage Foundation. I know most of the leadership very well, and I have for decades. I know Kevin Roberts, and I like him, and I'm grateful for his contributions to the conservative movement. If you're a regular watcher of this show, you can check the interview I did with Kevin on the release of his book just last December. Which is why what Kevin Roberts did last week is tragic and awful. He put out a statement that Heritage Foundation didn't just stand by Tucker Carlson. Kevin instead said openly and repeatedly that Tucker Carlson can do nothing, ever, that will sever his relationship with the conservative movement. He said that after and in defense of Tucker's glossing of Hitler defender Nick Fuentes. And he added that only members of the globalist class, direct quote, a venomous coalition, direct quote, subject to the dictates of someone else's agenda, direct quote, oppose Heritage's ongoing relationship with Tucker Carlson, which means that according to Kevin Roberts, apparently, anyone opposing the ongoing mainstreaming of Tucker Carlson is acting on behalf of a foreign power. Kevin's statement is a betrayal of the Heritage Foundation's history and principles, which is presumably why both Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes loved it. And that's a tragedy, because America needs a robust conservative organization based on principle and ideas, not personal loyalty to bad actors like Tucker Carlson. We need strong leaders in the conservative movement willing to speak out against the moral rot that threatens our future. I hope Kevin Roberts and Heritage show us that they can still be those leaders. But if not, we'll have to look elsewhere. So, why is all of this happening? Because, like the Democratic Party, the Republican Party is being eaten by its radicals. Many in the political class are too cowardly to stand up. Apparently, they're willing to play footsie with groypers and hug Tucker Carlson out of fear of somehow losing support. They've been bamboozled by the lies of the X algorithm and the TikTok metrics. The left followed its radicals to electoral hell. Apparently, many on the right wish to do the same. Forget the morality, then, for just a moment. Let's be pragmatic. Here is the thing. Americans hate Nick Fuentes' philosophy. They think it's trash. Republicans, by the polling, think it's trash. Independents think it's trash. Democrats think it's trash. And here's the other thing. Americans hate Tucker Carlson's laundered anti-Americanism. Republicans think it's trash. Independents think it's trash. Democrats think it's trash. Americans are not pro-segregation, pro-rape, anti-woman, pro-child marriage, anti-black, anti-Jew, anti-Indian, anti-Latino, anti-Constitution, pro-Hitler nutjobs like Nick Fuentes. And Americans are not pro-Putin, pro-Iran, pro-China, pro-Venezuela, pro-Hamas, pro-Fuentes, pro-Tate idiots like Tucker Carlson. They hate this vile garbage. If Republicans decide to cower before the likes of neo-Nazis and their propagandizers, they deserve to lose. And they will lose. Neo-Nazis and their propagandizers are not Republicans. They are not America First. They are not MAGA. They sure as hell aren't conservative. These people aren't to my right. They are not attached in any way to the fundamental principles of conservatism. And these people have already declared themselves to be my enemies. I'd be a fool not to take them seriously. If they get their way, they will hollow out the Republican Party, lead it to electoral catastrophe, and empty it and the country of any semblance of decency in the process. My answer is no. No to the groypers. No to their publicists like Tucker Carlson. No to those who champion them. No to demoralization. No to bigotry and anti-meritocratic horse shit. No to anti-Americanism. No. This is our country. This is our party. And this is our conservative movement. And I will not stand by while it is handed over to those who betray the most fundamental principles I have spent my entire life defending and advocating. That is a path to defeat and a path to moral oblivion. I reject it because if we lose the right, we will lose to the left. And either way, we'll lose the country. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show.
Well, thank you, Ben Shapiro.
Mm-hmm.
Hand the floor to Pam. What are your thoughts?
Well, I start with a term that I found a new love for when I came to Australia, which was far out.
Yeah.
I know people can sort of insert a euphemism in there. Please don't. When I say far out, I mean far out. I don't think I've ever heard free speech so abused in my life. I'm all for free speech, and I agree with Mr. Shapiro when he said that, cutting it, what is it? Canceling. Canceling is not the answer.
No.
And I agree. However, once upon a time, and you and I have both been in professional broadcasting. I was in radio in the States. You were in radio here. When I was in radio, when I first got into it was back in the early 90s, you had to have a license to broadcast in the United States governed by the Federal Communications Commission.
Which has standards.
They do, which required people to keep their language clean and to, not broadcast lies that were known to be lies, or just, those are extremes. But yeah, it was very closely governed. You could lose your license. Well, I was recently back in the States and I went to visit a friend who's still in radio. And we had a long talk, and I mentioned something, or she actually mentioned something about me possibly, volunteering on the state side. And I said, my license was, I still had my license. And she said, oh, you don't even need that anymore. I was quite shocked, to be honest, because that means without that regulation, you get these kinds of upstarts. I'll use that word if that's the right one. People who think they are all that, and they think they know everything. How old is this guy? 28? 29?
Yeah, going on 10.
You've blinked and you've missed his whole life. No offense to anyone. Yeah, you can learn some things, but I'm twice that age now, or nearly. And I can tell you, and a person who's being honest would say, you learn as you go. That guy has a lot to learn. The things he was saying about women, I had no words. I know people personally who've been through such beatings and such crimes against them, as were mentioned by this fellow, saying that women enjoy those things. Sir, and I say that loosely, he knows nothing. As a female, as a woman, I can tell you, no woman likes that. That is not how we wish to be treated. That is not biblical. If he thinks he's a Christian, he has a lot more than another thing coming.
I think that's what he sees on his computer screen when no one's looking, as we're going to find out. He's an absolute hypocrite. But more than that, he's filled with hate.
He seems to be. And I have seen that the people screaming the loudest against such things are often the guilty ones.
Again, as you said earlier, and Jesus said it, why do you accuse one another when you yourself do the same things?
Hypocrites.
He claims to be a staunch Roman Catholic. Like I said, anyone who believes that this
Nick
guy,
Fuentes?
anyone who believes this guy is a Christian has the discernment of a baked
Catholics
potato.
will have a big problem with that. Yes, absolutely. He's
baked potato.
Not a Christian, not a Catholic. And I start to, raise my eyebrows at Tucker Carlson, who claims also to be a Christian.
Another one.
How
baked
can you condone
potato.
that? Doesn't the Bible teach if you condone a thing, you're as guilty as if you've done it yourself?
Romans 1:18-32, read it. But even more that, James 3:6, okay? The tongue is a fire, a world of wickedness among the parts of the body. It pollutes the whole person, sets the course of his life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell.
That's what the Bible says about the tongue.
Yeah.
There are many other verses in that, the Bible cautions us. If you can control your tongue, you can control your whole body. Well, who of us has ever really been able to control their tongue that well?
No, nobody. But this guy doesn't even try, right?
Oh, my.
The tongues of, I read this, that there are tongues of hellish division wagging in the extreme right. Fuentes is a wannabe Hitler, a professing fundamentalist Catholic. That is a joke.
What version of Catholicism is he practicing?
The Adolf Hitler version.
It's a sect I've never heard of.
And he's a 100% hypocrite. I actually read a news report from a guy called Douglas Murray, who writes for the New York Post. And we'll put the link below. You should read his article. He suggested that, satirically so, that perhaps Nick Fuentes is an invention of the lunatic left sent to masquerade as the right in order to discredit the right politically, because you've got the midterms coming up, right? Mm-hmm. And this is conveniently started up now.
Well, they're ramping up for something. You can bet on that. The left is never silent when the right is in power. You just might not hear from them for a little while when they're in their huddle plotting what they want to do next to try and regain power and capsize the United States as we know it.
Right. I think Fuentes is a tuckified Trojan horse being rolled into Fort MAGA. and its purpose is to divide and conquer.
That is the best way to conquer anything, is to divide it, to make it into smaller, more manageable pieces.
Right. So why are we talking about this little demon? Because this little demon has come in to divide. And the whole purpose is divide and conquer. Tucker Carlson facilitated him and gave him a voice. Now, of course, being the snake that Fuentes is, he toned down what he normally talks about, which you heard about from Ben Shapiro.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't hear that on Tucker. Tucker sanitized that. Question is, why did you do that, Tucker?
Don't know, but did you notice that Fuentes, like the little scorpion he is, turned right around and stung Carlson after the fact, didn't he?
Yeah, well, that was actually before. They were having a little lover's tiff beforehand.
Oh.
And this was Tucker's way of, breaching the divide because,
gotcha.
as Ben Shapiro pointed out, they share the same audience of people.
So it's a strategic move so that they would unite again and become a more powerful force.
Yeah. Well, Fuentes is not the virtuous person he claims to be. Have a look at this.
Count yourself lucky if you don't know what's been happening on social media. And it's not just social media. It's what's been happening on the right. And a lot of people are like, why are we in the weeds? Because we have to fight the left. Well, God made us gave us the ability to walk and chew gum at the same time. So that's a great thing, right? But also, it's because we don't want to be like the left. And here's what I mean. You guys have seen what has happened with the left when they allowed the crazies to run the party. And now look, they're losing everything. This is why I always scratch my head when people are, I don't know why people want to rob the GOP of wins. When they go, well, we're tired of losing. We need to start winning. We got to start doing this and taking it back. Dudes, we own we run Washington. The border is closed. We're redefining trade deals all over the world. We have rooted out and are rooting out all of the abuse of government, like what was done with the FISA court and what's been done with Arctic frost. We got judges on the Supreme Court and reshaped it. We reshaped a third of the judiciary. What are you talking about? When I hear people say this, I honestly wonder if it's not a psyop from the left to try to get the right to question our own victories. So when people say we're not winning, I mean, for crying out loud, we got DEI unfunded. That's rolling back. What are you mad about? We haven't gotten in any more wars. What are you mad about? And I say this because there is a major power play underway. A lot of us have seen it and we just kind of watched it, but now it's all in front and center. And it has exploded. So like I said, you don't have to be in the weeds and know all of this stuff, but it is going to affect you. It's going to affect how you vote and who you vote for at some point. So here's the lay of the land. This is what happened last night. Heritage Foundation, and we've reached out to Kevin Roberts, who is the individual with Heritage who made the statement. Everybody, I think, is familiar with the Heritage Foundation, right? Everybody's familiar with them. I got a Salvatore Prize. I have the certificate on my wall that they sent for the Tea Party stuff during the Tea Party Day. I've hosted events for Heritage. I've done a lot of stuff for Heritage Foundation over the years and have always appreciated them. Daily Signal is their publication. And Kevin Roberts, who is the current president of Heritage, decided to wade into the big fight that has been developing on the right. I think it was bad for Roberts to have done that. It would have been better had he not said anything. But I hear a lot from certain people that it's very important to have a free exchange of ideas. I've been doing this in radio since 2008. We have a daily listening audience of, Kane, how many would you say?
Just radio alone, I would say on the minimum is about 10 to 12 million.
10 to 12 million. So I love that you have $400,000 for or 400,000 people watching your live stream. We have 10 million that listen terrestrially around the nation, plus all of the stuff that we have digitally. Daily, Monday through Friday, 3 hours a day. And we've reached out to Kevin Roberts beginning last night, because we wanted to talk to him about what he's talked about at Heritage. and he does not want to come on. First, they told us that very conveniently he was going to be in a car for the entirety of our show and wasn't going to be able to join. And maybe they have a special car where telephones don't work. I don't know. But that's, possibility. Who knows? I don't know. And now they've gone radio silent and we haven't heard any of them. Now I'm going to put this out there too. I've reached out to the big players that are in this, or the main players that are in this huge fight. And it's very interesting that people who have always wanted to have me on have always reached out. I've never pursued them to go on anybody's programs. It's always reverse because I'm just busy. I got a debate coming up next week. Suddenly now, the same people who talk about the free exchange of ideas, they go radio silent when you actually mean what you say and you want a free exchange of ideas. So this all stems from Tucker Carlson having on that Fuentes guy, who I've written about over at Substack, and I've heard a lot from you guys. A lot of you guys did not know all of this stuff. There's a bigger picture here, but this is just what happened. So he has him on. This is a guy, and look, how dare you judge somebody by what they tell you about them, right? Ooh, quelle horreur. How dare you judge someone's character by the things they say and the things they do? Am I right? Like, especially the stuff that they tell you over and over and over again in countless videos that are online, correct? This is an individual, the Fuentes guy, who has said that Hitler is very cool. He says he admires Stalin. And, well, it's just a lot of stuff. Let's just go ahead and play cut 3. I can't believe I'm playing this on my show, but I want you guys to understand who we're talking about in terms of who was interviewed. This is one cut.
Hitler was a pedophile and kind of a pagan. It's like, well, he was also really cool. So, time to grow up. We're not children anymore. Am I right? Am I right? Am I right, boys? Am I right? Let's go. He was also really cool. And any boy knows that. Anybody who watches these videos where he's
not joking. This is not something that and that's always the last refuge of the cowards. They are always like, no. I was joking in all of the videos where I said the same thing basically over and over again. I don't know. Maybe play cut 2 for me. Go ahead and play cut 2. This is what I'm talking about.
It's sort of like how a lot of women want to be raped. And when I say raped, I mean like, that sounds bad when I say it like that. But there's like a lot of women that really want a guy to beat the shit out of them. But also they have to pretend, but part of it is they have to pretend like they don't.
A recent Danish study found something heartbreaking. Just 1 year after an abortion, women were far more likely to need psychiatric care or struggle with behavioral disorders. That's not women's health care, that's trauma. Researchers found that 1 year after abortion, women were 50% more likely to require first-time psychiatric treatment and 87% more likely to experience personality or behavioral disorders. At preborn, women find something different, the kind of care that heals. Women are welcomed with compassion and shown their baby through ultrasound, often seeing life, not loss, for the first time. Since 2007, preborn has helped save over 380,000 babies and counseled over 500,000 women. Just $28 can provide a free ultrasound and the truth that saves lives, one mother, one baby at a time. Preborn provides counseling, diapers, maternity clothes, and so much more for up to 2 years. As year-end giving season approaches, dial pound 250 and say the word baby. That's pound 250 and say the word baby, or give online at preborn.com/Dana. All gifts are tax deductible and save lives. Now, there's some, I don't know if we can actually play this. This is something I was going to ask Juan. It's in Slack, by the way. But let's not forget, this is also a guy who got caught accidentally streaming gay porn during his live stream. You know how like you have tabs open on your computer, and I guess he had one open where he had been having some individual time off stream, and it was something that was caught by the whole audience. So I'm just saying, he's like a single dude. He's childless, no girlfriend. This is who Tucker was interviewing. And when he was saying that he admired Stalin, there was no pushback. When he was denying the principle or the belief of e pluribus unum, there was no pushback. There was no pushback on basically kind of the character assassination of Christians by assuming that every single person's a Zionist, or by assuming even that Zionists are as heretical as the people who are not following other commands of the Bible. I mean, there's a lot there. This is what we're talking about. There's a reason why I don't go, and this is the gay porn video that ended up accidentally streaming. We have it censored for those of you who just closed your eyes.
You can see his chat are like, what?
The chat was like, what in the world? His chat, yeah, they were like, what is happening? It would be like me. It would be like right now, we have a live stream and the chat's at Rumble. It would be like you being able to see my 4-foot wide screen here, and then you would see literally like a gay porn thing pop up. That's what happened. So this guy is kind of like the avatar for what I call the woke Reich. It's people who think that they're right-leaning, but they're really not, because they worship at the altar of identity politics. It's all about identity politics, and it's not even about principle. We're in a race for power, and this is ultimately what's happening. Having someone like that on, someone asked me, well, why don't you have so-and-so on for, why wouldn't you do it? Well, for the same reason that I'm not going to go behind the 7-Eleven that's like at the corner of, the nearest intersection and go and talk to the hobo that's talking to himself while he's digging through the trash and scratching his groin. That's the same reason I'm not going to go bring that guy on my show to talk about quantitative easing, to answer your question.
That was Dana Lesh. What do you think of that?
Well, she's not wrong.
What a little hypocrite.
Oh, my goodness.
He stands on his pulpit preaching his self-righteousness. He wants to, he attacks homosexuals. He attacks what he is. He hates blacks. He hates women. He hates goodness.
I think he's just a ball of hate for everything.
He needs help. He's sick.
I would be curious to know how he was raised and by whom. Did he have a seriously battered childhood or something? I mean, he has an attitude that is unmatched. And if this is the up-and-coming platform holders, I'm going to call them, because I don't like to call them podcasters. I think what they're doing is really, they're just big up-and-coming propaganda guns that are just working to divide the right,
Well, they're fomenting evil, and at some stage, free speech is free speech. But when it comes to politics, you get to a point, or even morality, you get to a point where you push a boundary that is unacceptable. In politics, it's called sedition, where you try to overthrow the government.
Well, then it looks like this is what he's been sent to do, to divide the force that the right has in the young people.
Yeah.
And they always start with the young people because they're so much easier to indoctrinate them than it is to try to reprogram an older person.
This is the whole point of putting this program together, to show you folk how dangerous these people are. They're not innocuous, and people aren't just blowing them off. The disaffected youth are embracing them. And why would that be? Honestly, it's because the church isn't doing her job. You need to be out there preaching the gospel. Changed lives lead to changed societies. Nicholas Joseph Fuentes is not a Christian. He's a child of the devil. If you can't see that, there's something wrong with you. This isn't about a difference of an opinion. This guy is filled with evil. And I'm the sort of person that believes that Kenneth Copeland has a demon. This guy.
Well, and he also has a platform, and he has an audience, and this is the thing we're cautioning about. I became a home educator many, many years ago when my children were young. They're now in their 40s. But I did so because I could see what was happening when I was in school, that there was more of a kind of societal thing happening and not necessarily an educational thing happening. That was my personal experience. But I also didn't want my children to be taught what to think. I wanted them to be trained how to think for themselves. And they did, and they do. It was a very successful, endeavor for us, and I'm glad that we did it. I have no regrets. But it was right on the cusp of when the education system really kind of went over the falls, and now we're seeing it just absolutely exponentially, we've seen how the left has taken over the education system. They must get the kids when they're young.
Yeah.
The older you get, the harder it is to convince people. But once you do convince people, even the older people, it's very hard to convince them they've been lied to. So we need to start where they're starting, with young people. We're not trying to indoctrinate anyone. We're trying to educate people, which is what my heart has been, even from when my children were young, all the way to now. And I now have grandchildren, who are going into those systems, who need to know the truth. We are that beacon of truth. You, Mom and Dad, you, Christian, are that beacon of truth.
Raise a child in the way they should go when they are young, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. Now, that's not a guarantee, but what you're doing is you're setting the foundation. Now, if you don't set them on the right path, the devil will make sure they go on the wrong path. And the wrong path leads to destruction and destructive ideologies that people like Nick Fuentes espouse. As I said, there's many more of them. That's the sad thing.
They're starting to they look like they're multiplying. What they really are is just coming up from the colleges, up from the Candace Owens followers, and they're sort of teaching each other all the bad things. But I do want to make it clear, I don't want to ever discredit teachers who have a love for teaching the truth to children, teaching them the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s. I have nothing against them. I've had some very, very good teachers who've educated me in my lifetime. So, I'm not poo-pooing the entire, teaching world. I'm simply saying the system that exists, that is the public education system, has been grossly infiltrated, and you need to be very, very vigilant. And if your school or system that your kids are in has gotten too far over the edge, you can remove your children. And better than that, you can go and get into the boards and make, the changes from inside. That's how you do that. But I do want to encourage those educators who are, really do love the truth and really do love the children.
Sure. I think a lot of this is a knee-jerk reaction to the lunatic left. And you've now got the lunatic right coming out, and we're seeing a factioning of society.
That's true.
But Tucker Carlson was held to account. There was some pushback, and he came out with a quote-unquote apology, which quite frankly was no apology at all. All he said was, "I'm sorry I said that." And I'm thinking, well, of course you did. You're getting pushback now. That wasn't an apology. That's like saying, well, I'm sorry you felt that I insulted you. That's not an apology either.
Or more accurately, I'm sorry I got caught.
That's what it is. So I'm thinking a prayer along these lines would be appropriate. So this is Tucker.
Hypothetically speaking.
Yeah, hypothetically speaking. Pray he does this, by the way. To all the Christians I offended recently by saying that I disliked them more than anything, I'm sincerely sorry and ask for your forgiveness for sinning against you in such a way, and by giving tacit legitimacy to someone who really belongs in a padded cell, not on a podcast. I made some really stupid, insensitive, and theologically ridiculous statements against believers in Jesus Christ who have been labeled Christian Zionists simply because they believe the Jewish people have the right to occupy and self-govern in their own ancestral land, a land promised and given to them by the same God whom I claim to believe. I see the error of my ways and promise in future to pull my head in, enroll in Sunday school, and learn about the true Christian faith before claiming to be a spokesperson for it, when it is clear that I presently have no clue. And I will be more mindful and careful about holding the gate of the sheep pen open to savage wolves such as Nick Fuentes. Please pray for me that the Lord brings me into the light and into the truth. Regards, Tucker.
Well, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, well, don't hold your breath.
Well, we can pray for him that the Lord would have mercy on him, that he would actually repent of his errors.
Yeah,
that
and pray for Candace, and even for Nick. I mean, these people have big mouths, but that's not the unforgivable sin.
Correct.
Rejecting Christ is an unforgivable sin. The sad thing about all three of these believe that they're already Christians, and I dispute that. Nick Fuentes just hates everything.
He seems to. And these are days when our discernment really needs to be honed. We really need to be tuned in and listening carefully for the Holy Spirit who leads us into all truth and helps us with that discernment.
Also need to pray for President Trump. Christians are commanded to pray for those that God has put in authority over them. Pray for President Trump for wisdom. Pray also for our leaders here. I use leaders in air quotes here because we have an overflowing cup of rogue and incompetent actors in our halls of power. And we need a revival as well. But not a revival of right-wing politics. We need a revival back to Christ, back to God, back to the Word of God. Mm-hmm. Because when God's Word is rightly preached, this sort of extremism is kept at bay. Mm-hmm. We'll never destroy it until the Lord returns to destroy it. Mm-hmm. But we are meant to be salt and light, and we are meant to, I believe that the Holy Spirit uses the church to restrain the evil in this world. The Holy Spirit lives in us. We are the church. Mm-hmm. So the Holy Spirit through us is restraining evil. But there is coming a time when the Holy Spirit is going to take us out.
And there will be no restraint on
no
evil.
Breaks.
You do not want to be present on earth when that happens.
Yeah, Nick Fuentes will come out like roaches.
We've seen nothing yet. And you know, the world that we live in, you and I both have grandchildren. You know, when my children were young, it was a very, very important issue to me to teach them right from wrong, to teach them how to think for themselves and give them the skills they would need to navigate this crazy, insane world. And I was very naive, I admit it. Learned a lot since then. Now I have grandchildren, and that ups the ante considerably. I've actually met people who have said with their own mouth that they don't care what happens after they leave. It's up to the well, hang on a minute. Don't you love your grandchildren? I certainly do.
Yeah.
So this is why we are illuminating the young people who are snatching the young people and trying to get them, you know, off the right track, onto the wrong track as early as possible to get them loyal to the left. And we're here to combat that, to stand in the gap.
Parents are not to allow their children to do what they want, when they want, find their own way in life. That is the most irresponsible kind of quote-unquote parenting.
That's not parenting.
That's breeding.
Yeah, and there are people who are proud of that.
If children aren't pointed in the right way, well, what do they say? A bad child turns into a bad adult. Mm-hmm. That's the way that works. Mm-hmm. Is society responsible for that? Yeah, really. But the home should be the place where the child is protected, nurtured, and instructed in the right way. Mm-hmm. What is the right way? You know very well what the right way is.
God wrote it on every human heart.
Yes, he did.
That's his words.
And
so
you'll also
try to refute it.
You'll also find that truth in the Christian Bible. Mm-hmm. No other religion is true. No other religion is right. Mm-hmm. There is only one way, one truth, one life. That is Jesus Christ. And we stand and die by that. We will.
And whether you confess him here and now or you do not, on the day that he has stated when he is here on this earth, every knee will bow and every tongue will confess. So, you know, our advice to you is do that now. Do that while you're living, while there's still today. Do it now.
Look, this is a scary world that is spiraling down really quickly where you have people like Nick Fuentes describing the Jews being executed in those Nazi concentration camps, describing them as cookies being baked in an oven with the kind of callous indifference, that inhuman ghoul that he is and that his followers are. These gullible groypers or whatever they're called.
I don't know, but that man, having said those things, appeared to me to be soulless.
Yeah.
And I don't want him leading my grandkids or your grandkids or any children. No young people. No people, period. I wouldn't want him to train a dog.
I mention him because he claims to be a Christian. Mm-hmm. And he's one that the Apostle Paul said was a savage wolf. Mm-hmm. And he is savage. And those who follow him in his rat pack are equally as savage. You've got to raise your children in the truth and protect them from animals like this. Mm-hmm. Because they are ferocious and they will devour them.
And they're no less vulnerable if they're 21 than they were when they were 1 or 2. They're still vulnerable in a different way and young. We with the experience, the moms, the dads, the grandmas, the grandpas, the mentors, we're the ones who are having to, you know, pick up that baton and train these people. If we don't, then I think we're equally liable.
I agree.
In how they turn out, yeah.
Charlie Kirk called Nick Fuentes vermin.
That's a good word for him.
I think that was a very tame way of putting it. And I've been very restrained this week because having to listen to that person spruik what he spruiks is not easy to do.
Well, this was my first time through, and I was seeing red, and that's being very tame.
Yeah.
It
Pam was
me
yelling at the
deeply.
screen. Yeah.
Yeah, I came out of my chair a couple of times. The man is dead wrong. He's a liar. He's a tool in the hands of the enemy.
Absolutely. Satan is using him mightily.
Right.
But fortunately, most people aren't going to buy his trash. But there's going to
Pray
come a
that they
time
won't.
when humanity will buy lies wholesale. And so,
Well, in the absence of people like Charlie Kirk, who went to the university campuses and, debated people on the truth, we stand in that same ground doing the same thing to those young people. Listen, we know the truth. We have the answers. Why? Because we've got what God said, and nobody has trumped him.
right. And it's up to us to stand. Who said that evil prevails when good men do nothing? Christian, you need to stand up. You need to stand up and make your voice be known. You need
Yes,
to
do.
be the salt. You need to be the light.
Wherever and whenever that opportunity arises,
Yeah.
do.
Stand against evil, otherwise it will overthrow you. It's not benign.
And as the Bible teaches so effectively, pray without ceasing every time you see an issue, which will be there in front of your face at the grocery, the bank, the post office, your own grandkids in your own living room, your kids' friends, your friends' friends, Everybody knows somebody, and wherever it's up to you, do the right thing. Tell what is true. Tell people about Jesus. The days are getting very, very short.
Don't leave it to them to find their own way. I knew a woman once, and we'll close shortly. I knew a woman once, we were having this discussion about raising children and teaching them ethics, and she said of her husband and herself, we've decided not to force our religion on our children. We're going to let them find their own way. And I said to her, well, you might as well wrap them up in a ribbon and tie a bow around their neck and give them to Satan as a gift, because that's exactly what you're doing.
And that poor child who, yes, young adult, whatever, that young person doesn't know how to get where they're going. That is so cruel. You've got the map. You've got a way that you've taken, and hopefully your parents or grandparents have been, had input into you that gave you sort of a guide, a way to navigate this, and you've left them hanging. You hate that child. You absolutely hate him doing that.
Of course, but we're dealing in a lot of cases with parents who don't know the way themselves.
This is true.
They think there is no God and other such absurdities.
And this is why we're mentioning the moms, the dads, the grandmas, the grandpas, the mentors, Christian people who work in businesses. Everybody is somebody somewhere. Everybody interacts with somebody somewhere. Even in the weirdest, most remote places, you're going to find another human being. And that, in my opinion, is a divine appointment. And if the subject comes up or you're talking to them as a human being, whatever that subject goes to, everyone can share the truth with another person.
Absolutely. When it comes to navigating the world, remember that bad company corrupts good behavior, so choose your company well. Stay away from Tucker Carlson. Stay away from Candace Owens. Stay away from Nick Fuentes, the Groypers, and all the extremists like them. They're dangerous. They are to be marked. They are to be marked and avoided.
This is something I used to tell my children. I still call them children. They are adults. When they were children, when they were young, I used to tell them, someone can challenge you to do something or encourage you to do something or say, hey, yeah, that's the greatest thing in the world to do. They're not on the hook for the result or the consequence. You are. So you need to think about who you're listening to and what you're listening to them tell you to do.
Yeah.
Your parents love you. Those people in the box don't. They don't know you. You're a number to them. You're money. Don't believe them. If they're not telling the truth, and you've got the standard to compare it with, and that's God's word, and God says to do that. Test every spirit to see whether it is from God. So.
And in the words of the great prophet Miyagi, no such thing as bad student, only bad teacher. All right, we'll leave you with that until next week. I'll leave you a blessing. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. We'll see you next time.
See ya.